the one that would be most interesting and most positive because it actually it has been positive throughout all the years. It's the focus session 5, assessing what, who, how, where, and when, questions in the high tech endeavors. And someone who, again, we didn't take them loosely, the chair or the discussion leader, someone who is distinguished in this field, that is in digital and cyber, Mr. Eugene Roman. And then the discussants will be Mr. Bogdan Kupic, Mr. John Polk, that you've heard from already, and special discussant Richard Ogilvy. And so with that, Mr. G.
Окей. Добрий день. Я хочу це по-українськи чи по-канадськи? I'm from Canada. There are many good things about Canada, except for the weather. And since it's the NHL hockey season, it's a whole new season. So the order of play, we have 1 hour. You'll get a sense I'm very disciplined about time. Час ми однакові не маємо, решта ми нічого не маємо. So we're going to go with our speakers 7 minutes each on the clock. Hopefully Bogdan is in. Hi Bogdan, Slava Ukrainian. And John, are you on?
Yes, he's on as well.
John is on as well. You've heard from John already. He's not overexposed. He's a multi-entrepreneur, multi-talented fellow. So we're going to go 25 minutes. Each speaker, shotgun style. We have some prepared questions. Remember, this is the last session of the day. I want everybody out there in here, please. Or be quiet. See, I learned from the best. I learned from Jay Leno. Okay, yeah, a bit. It's not my first rodeo. If everybody can come on in, you're going to miss a great session. I do pretty good, not stand-up comedy. Okay, now we have some prepared questions. If you have questions, this is a very important session. Ukraine, the tech nation, is what we're going to talk about in the next hour. Hopefully, you'll learn a few new things, and your questions are important. And then we'll do closing comments, then we'll have a closing conference, and then the Piateca, as the father would have said. Okay, so the tech sector, what's known as the IT industry, where I come from, has been the fastest growing sector in Ukraine. Okay, it has grown 46 times in the last 15 years or so. It parallels the growth of microprocessors, which have significantly changed the world. Until the war, Ukraine was well on its way to becoming the world leader in 4 digital technologies. Okay, if you have a question on that, we can answer that. It has many deep skills and advantages. When the larger and larger IT populations in all of Europe, in a world where the world is running out of IT people. Yes, that includes Canada, includes the US, shortage of IT people. It takes 25 years to produce an IT professional. So if you kind of look at 30 years of Ukrainian post-first level independence, the schools kicked in, but that's not the case. Silicon Valley was in Lviv. Now, who knew that? Anybody not know that? It was Lviv. Lviv was the Silicon Valley of the Soviet Union, because the Soviets had these 5-year plans. It was dumb, but it being what it is, and they would go to sectoral advantage. Okay, Ukraine is a massive country. If you walk into schools and you listen to parents, when they the studies are so tough, it's all math and sciences. One thing I learned in the last 15 years is, where did the Sputnik space probe that challenged President Kennedy, where did the Sputnik space probe get built? Anybody know? Okay, right. So according to the Russians, Soviet. Okay, so if we look at Ukraine, the innovation nation, we're going to explore that today. Ukraine has a useful time zone. It's not a flip on the North American time zone. It's very convenient to the European time zone. It also has cost competition. The tax rate in Ukraine, it breaks my heart to say, is 5% for contract IT workers. I wish we had that hand up there. 5%. Okay. And that gives them a sectoral advantage. Belarus has that. Russia had that. We'll talk someday about what's happened to the Russian collapse of its IT sector. So the tech sector in Ukraine has been disrupted by the war in expected and unexpected ways. Notwithstanding that, we're going to talk today about the 3 R's of the Ukrainian tech sector: the resilience, the resourcefulness of the people, and the 3rd R, responsiveness. I've executed many thousands of projects in Ukraine. The responsiveness 20 years ago when I started working there was not there, but they learned their lessons well. Things like agile, rapid solution development, TRIZ, the Ukrainian invention that most people don't know what it is, modern engineering, sciences, solution engineering, Ukrainians are deep experts at that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we also have the opportunity as things go forward, past this very unfortunate and toxic war, to not, as was said, to rebuild, but to build for the future. Because guess what? Technology, whether it's mobile technology, whether it's drones, whether it's AI, whether it's search technology, all of these technologies, Ukrainians are experts at. So we have 3 highly accomplished executives with us today. I'm going to do a quick intro. Bogdan Kupic, a Canadian. Most good things come from Canada, except for the weather, by the way. Bogdan Kupic has worked in the ICT industry for over 30 years. He's a personal friend. We've worked together in Ukraine. He has done some very interesting things with KM Core. He is a patriot for Ukraine and a champion of the tech sector. Richard Ohilchin, an entrepreneur, an experienced asset manager, a banker, served decades as an investment advisor across many different sectors. He's a very accomplished. We get to see him in the flesh. What's better than that? He's also now directing capital investment in the high-tech sector in Ukraine through Grand Founders Initiative, not just in Ukraine. John Falk, you've heard about. I'm not going to reintroduce John. John, if you want me to say other nice things about you, you're in South Carolina, the weather's beautiful, and thank you for joining us today. So with that, we're going to move to our agenda. I'm going to ask Bogdan to give us the perspective from Katie. If I'm moving too quickly, I can move even faster. So you have to me hold it. You know, if you listen to Ukrainian television, which I have at every one of my homes in Canada, and I do sort of worry. So, you know, I'm talking at a normal pace. Okay, hopefully I've gotten your attention.
Yes.
Because it's hard to sit in that chair all day, trust me. My body feels it too. Bogdan, you have 7 minutes. Use it wisely.
Okay, start the clock. Thanks, Yevhen. I'm very pleased to be able to take part in this event. I just wanted to remind everybody, I am sitting in Kyiv, and in about 50 minutes, martial law begins, which is a reminder that this unnecessary war continues to go on. And I would like to also just make a comment about every Ukrainian that I know is doing what they can to overcome this war. And the primary objective is to end this war. Now, as Yevhen said, I'm from Canada, but I've been working in Ukraine for 31 years now. And I've seen a lot of presidents, prime ministers, Ministers, deputies, ambassadors, companies come and go. Some successful, not all. In 1992, I was the founding president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine. You can imagine going back in 92. Let's go back there for a second. I was the director of a global IT company, and some people, I'm sure, there with gray hair or with no hair would remember Digital Equipment Corp. So I worked for Digital in Canada, and I was sent to Ukraine in 1992 when it was starting to become possible to sell technology in the former Soviet Union. So I landed in Ukraine February 28th, 1992. So go back to 92, no Mercedes, no advertising, no internet, no mobile phones, no Facebook, no Twitter, no TikTok, and very few computers. So over these 31 years, I've seen the good, the bad, and also some ugly. So Ukraine became independent in 1991, where every region of Ukraine voted for independence, including Crimea. Ukraine gave up its nukes. Then we had an Orange Revolution, and then a Revolution of Dignity, Maidan. And now I think we're going through a digital revolution. So the IT sector, which I've worked for in the past for 30 years, has been a catalyst for transformation. In the early days, it was a non-transparent industry. It had a lot of problems. It had mostly contracts with the government. And I think everybody knows what took place. But it has transformed to become a driver of the digital revolution taking place. And partially, why did IT become successful is because the government didn't understand IT. Didn't understand what it can do. And by the way, much of the success of the IT in Ukraine was done without venture capital. So they did it sort of through cash flow and winning contracts and building companies. Today, Ukraine is a key global delivery location for IT engineering and R&D services, although the war has created uncertainty and some concerns. Hundreds of thousands of IT specialists work in both large and small companies. IT revenues, export revenues in 2022 were about $9 billion, and it's growing. And despite the war, the tech sector is maintaining those revenues while having to adjust their business strategies, of course. There are many examples of innovation taking place. Civic mobilization. Volunteers have created, for example, the Army of Drones, the IT Army of Ukraine, the Cyber Warfare Group, with members numbering in the thousands. Another example is Aero Rozvidka, which is also making tremendous strides. And probably some of you know Mikhailo Fedorov. He's the current Deputy Prime Minister of Digital Transformation. Guess when he was born? He was born in the year that Ukraine became independent. So he is an example of the new Ukrainian, not born in the Soviet Union, not born in Soviet command control. So he wrote, as Ukrainian and Russian troops fight conventional battles on the front lines, this is a hybrid war of technology as Ukraine fights with drones, satellite communications, and defends against cyber warfare. And traditionally, war and conflict have been driving forces for development of technologies and innovations. Look at Silicon Valley, there's many examples there. And many of the innovations can be commercialized and have dual use applications. One example, maybe some of you know Kropyva. Kropyva is a mapping application, one of the most widely used by the armed forces. And it was developed in our incubator, Quasar Micro, in 2014. The war also creates conditions described in the last session to test Western arms and weapon systems. Ukrainians can do more with less, and they can do it quickly. I'll quickly run through some of the software applications used by the military that have been developed in the past couple of years. Kropiva, Milchat, Delta, Gizar, Terminal, Combat Vision, Virage, Planchette, and many, many more. And by the way, volunteer initiatives have also become important drivers of technology innovation. Through strong levels of trust, speedy mobilization of civil society, and increased levels of civic engagement help to strengthen democracy in Ukraine. And it is already playing an important role in the country's reconstruction. The organization RTI International found, and I think it was mentioned earlier today, 79% of all Ukrainians have donated money to defense efforts. There are more than 100 unique civic organizations that are being supported. And 42% of Ukrainian respondents have volunteered time or expertise to the war effort. And that is young people, people born not in the Soviet Union, but born in Ukraine. There are many apps that have been developed for civil use, including Trivoha. I have it on my phone, as more than 7 million people or 8 million people have it. What happens when the air alarm goes off, your phone alarms, and it tells you, and a map comes up, tells you where it is to warn you. That's one. Dia, with 18 million users, with 70 digital services online. Evorog was a great application. This is kind of the a defensive tool, better than radar. If you hear something, you contact Evorog, and real-time civil notification app. It coordinates things. It tells them something's happening. You hear a rocket, you hear a noise, you see troop movements, you report it, instantly they know in a centralized way. There are real-time civilian apps, for example, room sharing, volunteer drivers, truck logistics, job boards, first aid instructions, and many more. There's IT Generation is a free online training for programmers. This was done because they realized people will be coming home after the war, people will lose their jobs, etc. So our company was founded in 1992 and became one of the largest IT companies in Ukraine and the region. And today our portfolio companies include the biggest data center and cloud company in Ukraine, ag tech, some semiconductor design in the past, and defense tech. We started in defense tech in 2014, and everybody knows what happened in 2014. And we wanted to do our part. We wanted to help. We started with volunteers. We created a company, and today it is a serious defense tech company working to help Ukraine win the war. And the objective, it was discussed in the previous panel, to build a new defense industry in Ukraine. It has everything it needs, except perhaps a little bit of support and a little bit of money and cooperation with defense sector and technology companies in friendly countries. So that was 2014. In February 2022, with some of our employees going to fight, and we were close to the International Legion that was coming to Ukraine, and based on feedback from our armed forces and some of our territorial defense forces, we created an interactive combat simulator. And this simulator has trained 16,000 troops today. So it goes to show that you can do things quickly. And somebody called it the MacGyver effect. We talked about that in our call we had a couple days ago. That is finding quick fixes, innovative solutions to immediate problems. And that is why I am personally convinced, that's why I'm in Kyiv, that it will undoubtedly help Ukrainians overcome, rebuild, and ultimately thrive. Thank you. Was that 7 minutes?
You're 9 minutes, but you get an extra bonus for the 2 minutes, so.
No.
So, thank you. We're gonna move to John Falk, who's online. Perspective on the Ukraine tech advantage. He has a lot of experience in this area. And John, as I've learned, likes to tell war stories, so fasten your seatbelt. You're gonna hear some great stories. Go for it, John.
Eugene, thank you for the honor of being on this distinguished panel. And if you can ask Makola, I had sent Makola some pictures of unmanned ground vehicles that if he could give you access to share those, they would be excellent visual aids. So by way of background, I was first asked to come to Ukraine back in 2014, 2015 to really support our US DoD SOLIC support for Ukraine Army, Ukraine National Guard in the area of unmanned systems. Through that, I had the honor of meeting many very impressive members of the Supreme Rada, members of parliament, including Alexei Skripnik. He invited me to come out to his company and visit it in Lviv, Ukraine. When I arrived in Lviv, which is a magnificent city unto itself, and I arrived at this 2-story, very long, maybe 2 city block long building, and I walked through the front door. I swear to you all, I could have been walking into Google or to Facebook or to any myriad of technology companies in Silicon Valley because it was so contemporary with all of these exciting young people. And then Alexei took me on a tour and we went through these heavy plastic drapes at one point on the tour. And he said, John, now you've just been transported back to the 1950s. This building was the DARPA of the Soviet Union. It is where they were doing initial computer work, chemical and biological testing. This was their hub of innovation, not in Russia, in Kyiv, Ukraine. I mean, Lviv, Ukraine. It gave me a whole new perspective. And when I learned that that company 30 years ago had received its really large contract with an American icon, the Walt Disney Company, their engineers were doing simulation and animation for Disney from Lviv, Ukraine. The pictures that I'm hoping Makola can share with Eugene to put up, they also showed me how they were supporting the Ukraine Special Forces and had developed a unique unmanned ground vehicle that was extraordinary at the time. Nothing like it was even being on the drawing boards in the US military, and it was quite extraordinary. When I think about this topic, when I think about Ukraine, I think about Albert Einstein. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And I have been talking for years about the MacGyver of the battlefield, which are the Ukrainians. And so to see what they were able to achieve, realizing the limitations of American donated drones in dealing with and engaging with the Russians, they set out to come up with how to operate in a GPS denied environment, how to operate and evade Russian electronic warfare and signals intelligence issues. Truly extraordinary activities. And as I had raised in the last panel, I can assure you they are changing the landscape of the modern battlefield in the use of drones, electronic communications, counter drone, etc. But to Bowden's point, it goes across many sectors. I had the honor of helping to evacuate a Ukrainian mother and daughter, 7-year-old, from Kiev. Her mother and father are still in Kiev. Wonderful people. And they live with me in Charleston. And to Bowden's point, it's amazing how much more Ukraine is advanced in mobile technology than the United States. And I saw this firsthand during COVID, where I was working with Elix and their Dr. Elix health information management software, and the fact that they were able to, they had already deployed extraordinarily capable health information systems to over 100 facilities across Ukraine in real time, compared to the total incompetence of the US public health authorities. And when I've learned that a Ukrainian can have their driver's license, their passport, and all their critical details right on their smartphone, and America hasn't even gotten close to some of those capabilities. And it's fascinating to see on so many levels innovation and the leading edge in Ukraine. And I'll also note that years before this conflict began, I had the honor of going to Silicon Valley to meet the mayor of Kiev. The reason that he was in Silicon Valley was to talk about his primary initiative of creating Kiev as a smart city. He was already doing things in Kiev in terms of electronic government services on a mobile platform that people in America were thinking about, but not doing. He was actually doing. And so I just have the greatest respect and regard for the IT, the technology industry. And one of the things that was so sad to me on the day of the invasion, I had been with Alexei Skripnik in Wilmington, North Carolina, 3 weeks before that invasion. The day of the invasion, he very sadly, at 53, had a heart attack in his office and passed away. Ukraine lost a great, great leader and resource and innovator. But I helped work with the Elix team to move over 350 people into and away from harm's way. And they moved and set up an office in Krakow, Poland, and have offices in Chicago, Illinois at this point. And to Bowden's critical point, despite this conflict, these people are so hardworking. They have continued to work and support their clients and deliver excellent solutions throughout this horror. And I just had the highest regard and respect. And with that, I will pass it back to our leader.
Thanks, John. And in a true military fashion, you're right on time. I know.
Recovering lawyer, sir.
Alexei's passing was a great loss, and a great loss to the country, but also the industry. He let me drive a UAV tank, by the way, which I smashed into a few trees, but
well, Eugene, I want you to know that I was trying very much to have his son, Anton Skripnik, be able to come over, but he had a conflict. And he was the one that shared the pictures that I've given to Mykola. But this ties back also to the agriculture sector, where you talk about the tank. They've outfitted tractors with the gear to be able to remotely operate tractors. And when I think about what USAID is trying to do in terms of preparation for the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, everyone recognizes the criticality of the agricultural sector. But what's also critical, here is their unmanned ground vehicle that's been heavily weaponized and put into service. And there's another. I think the tractor is next. there you go.
Appreciate that. Unfortunately, when I drove it, it didn't have a rocket launcher or a border on it, but I'm ready at any time. Thank you, of course, John. We're gonna move on.
Got it.
Go ahead. Yeah, got it. We're good. Okay. Now we're gonna hear from Richard. Yep. He's a banker type. He buys and sells tech companies, right? And he's been very successful at that. And as he represents investing in tech Ukraine. Yeah, thank you. It's an honor indeed.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And it's a great for me by default to support Ukraine, but we have a strong community of responsible business leaders and investors who never been in Ukraine and who support significantly Ukraine. As we agreed before with Walter, with Eugene, with Sandri, that to speak about some results, how to support Ukraine, how to invest in Ukraine. And I would say there's no unique solution or some universal solution for everyone, how to do that, how to invest, how to support and what to do, when, and who has to do that. But I would start with grant founders. Our foundation is an economic development and national security foundation. We make impact investments and support emerging entrepreneurs globally with a focus on Ukraine. And as of now, we have a strong community. We call them ambassadors. It's a responsible business leaders and investors. As of now, it's 40 people. Most of them are Americans, successful entrepreneurs. Collectively, they do manage and oversee about $300 billion of investable assets. And all of them, they support our foundation and they support Ukraine. All of them, they donate, all of them, they invest. And some of them, they represent big single family offices or big institutional investors like top 5 or top 10. And what I wanted to say, because I believe the results should speak about the strategy. Does it? Oh, it works like this. Yeah. So I just decided to invite not just to speak about a solution or something like theoretical. I decided to invite and agree with the organizer to invite here a few investors and donors who support our foundation and who already invest in Ukraine. And 3 of them, they never been in Ukraine. And it's new for them. And I would ask here Eddie Cullen, who's one of our investor and sponsor. Eddie runs his own Crescent is a blockchain and impact investments foundation organization, as well as Archer Vishankar, who owns the only licensed neobank in the US, as well as Mike Murati, who's with us today online. And Mike decided a few weeks ago to create a consortium of venture capital and private equity investors here in the US, and to commit to invest into Ukrainian entrepreneurs. So I would ask just a few words briefly to introduce and why you decided to support Ukraine, why you decided to invest in Ukraine. And I know Eddie and Archie already hired Ukrainians. So this is probably going to be the most important for people and for investors and for global community to hear practical steps, why and when they need them.
So my name is Eddie Cullen. It's nice to meet you all. I'm based out of here in New York. So I've been in the early stage tech sector for about 10 years. So I've probably helped accelerate about 1,000 companies, raising over $1 billion in venture capital, mostly at a company.co in Midtown Manhattan, formerly known as Grand Central Tech. Since then, I've been working a little bit in public policy and politics, and now I have my own blockchain-based impact investment firm, about 30 people. My co-founder was Mike Bloomberg's former general counsel of about 20 years. So we're using blockchain for impact investments. I met Richard about a year ago and passionate about trying to help entrepreneurs within building their own companies. And this is a topic and organization that I just want to help. So we've donated, we've sponsored, and we're here to help mentor and support emerging entrepreneurs from Ukraine.
Hi, my name is Archie. I'm the founder and CEO of Cogni, which is a digital bank based in New York. I met Richard about a year ago, almost 7-8 months ago, not a year, about 8 months. I've been actively involved with things that's been happening in Ukraine because I'm on a board of an organization called C4ADS, which is called Center for Advanced Defense Studies. We track everything that affects US national security, which is terrorism, proliferation, money laundering, etc. So we've been actively involved in Ukraine dismantling Russian information systems. We had the largest database set for all the customs data, everything that is going to Russia that is being fueled against Ukraine. So we literally mapped all the Chinese companies which are supplying components to the Russian war machine. And we have used our influence to choke point those supply chains to minimize the impact of Russia in Ukraine. So I've been actively involved in this. The team has about 200 analysts based across DC, some of the smartest kids you ever think of. The C4ADS is manned by ex-intelligence guys who founded the Inquitel. So we've been involved in various theaters of war. Ukraine, it's an information war. We also created an open mapping system so that we can reduce misinformation from Russia. So we can pinpoint exactly what's happening. And if Russians say something is happening there, we can actually tell you whether it's real or not. It's a publicly available information mapping. So this is a total information war, and we've been very actively involved, not just choking the supply chain of Russia's allies, but also trying to create much more of an open forum that the world is very well educated based on facts and reality. That's besides what I do full time. I run a digital bank. We have engineers in Eastern Europe, and I did tell Richard we'd be very actively looking at hiring more Ukrainians and helping them relocate, whether the United States or other parts of the world where they would feel a lot more safer. And we are very, very committed to opening up the team up there. And I've been very excited to work with Richard through the process, and I look forward to meeting you all.
Richard, you've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, Mike, can you please briefly introduce yourself and why you support and invest in Ukraine, and I like your team there too. It's the Ukrainian flag.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you everybody for the opportunity, and thank you, Richard. So Cortado Ventures is a B2B tech venture capital fund based in Oklahoma City, and we invest predominantly energy, logistics, life sciences. And we're thrilled to support this initiative to help Ukrainian entrepreneurs build phenomenal world-changing companies. It's our belief that entrepreneurship is vital to the economic strength of any country, but particularly those that are going to be rebuilding in the years to come, but also a bolster against tyranny in all of its forms. So as a child, I was born in Iran before all of the unpleasantness happened in that country. We fled at a very young age to the United States, and our family flourished. But certainly was not an easy time. Lots of horrific stories in our family from those days. But I understand the plight of those that are torn from their countries. So it's our belief that we must stand up for free and pluralistic societies. And so that's why I'm excited to support Grand Founders financially. But it's not enough to just write a check. I believe that getting others to step up and to back companies in the region that may be temporarily displaced. So that's why we've created this new initiative to recruit other venture capital and private equity funds to pledge a portion of their funds, either dollars, percentage, or even without any specific constraints, but in an effort to support these burgeoning companies that might be a fit for their investment criteria. So given the time, I would just offer to have a call with anybody who may have an interest in supporting that effort. And thank you certainly for the time to tell you a bit more about it.
Thank you, Michael. In conclusion, I would say that where we can see the lack of investments in Ukraine, especially in tech, it's a corporate and human capital governance, as well as post-investment value creation. Because great investors, they don't invest into projects. Great investors invest in people, and they invest in people that can make, who can make revenue after all, because investors expect return on their investments. Thank you.
Special thank you to our invited guests. I do encourage you to go to Ukraine when it's safe to go there. It is a wonderful place, especially to be KU, Kharkiv. They're wonderful tech hubs. And I'd be happy to host you in any of the labs that are there. We're going to go to questions quickly in the interest of time. I know everybody's antsy for that cocktail hour, but we can wait a minute or two. First question to Bogdan. Bogdan, given your ground perspective from KU, what role do you foresee tech IT playing going forward as Ukraine overcomes the enemy and moves to the build stage of the future?
So some of that I've sort of discussed in my previous little speech. The first thing they can do is to out-innovate the Russians. And all the things that I mentioned that can be done depends on human capital. And Ukraine has a fantastic level of human capital. I think that the IT services industry, as it is today, will start producing more products made in Ukraine. So today they're working to the benefit of lots of multinationals. If you look at some of these companies, they're working with the top American, top Fortune 500 companies. But the examples I gave you of DIA, for example, is a product that is unique. In fact, the Estonians are going to start using DIA, and Estonians are pretty tech savvy if you think about it. So it means more products can be developed in Ukraine, more services developed in Ukraine, and then of course made available internationally. You know that gaming, for example, Ukrainian companies are leaders in the world in gaming. And when we made our simulator, we take that expertise, we combine it with a real war going on, with people that are seeing things every day and providing feedback every day in real time, then you get something that is world-class. And I think the IT industry will start developing more, and hardware and technologies, et cetera, and the IT and the engineers working there, given the opportunity to form their own companies. So I was one of the founding members of the Ukrainian Venture Capital Association. Venture capital was difficult in Ukraine. It was non-existent practically. So by financing and giving these IT specialists so they can become entrepreneurs and create companies. They can do it in part-time and then make their own companies. They can spin off other ideas and other companies. I think that's where this human capital can be to the benefit of Ukraine, and not just that, but Europe and the rest of the world.
Great, thanks, Bogdan. I think the out-innovate the Russians, world-class capability and scale. By the way, where was Angry Birds invented? Western Ukraine, in case you want to know. Okay. Even President Obama was put that. So, John, you've got extensive experience in unmanned systems, command and control communications, interop. Given that knowledge, that expertise, and working with the Ukrainian Defense Forces, what do you foresee for the future of smart war?
Eugene, right now, one of the items that I failed to mention about Alexei Skripnik and one of his great legacies was helping to create the Ukrainian Institute for the Future back in 2014, I believe. And one of the major publications that they facilitated, Professor Vold, I'll completely screw up his name, but he wrote a treatise on hybrid warfare. And one of the gentlemen that spoke earlier about this being an information war. Yes, I agree, but it's hybrid warfare. This is the first major hybrid warfare conflict in the world. And when you realize the depth of disinformation, cyber, the elements of electronic warfare, signals intelligence, each of the items that Alexei's son Anton Skripnik is doing with Robineers in terms of unmanned ground vehicles. You see the systems that the Ukraine National Guard are deploying for counter drone activities. I see that in this phase of recovery, reconstruction, once hostilities stabilize, being able to leverage these technologies, with the unmanned tractor to do demining of agricultural sector, to be able to assist in a variety of initiatives that will be core to Ukraine's recovery. But I can tell you, May 8th to the 11th, I'll be in Tampa Bay, Florida, at the invitation of the former head of the US Navy SEALs, because that is SOF Week. The special operations teams in the United States are keenly interested in lessons learned from their brothers in arms in Ukraine across the unmanned system spectrum, electronic warfare spectrum. So I see a burgeoning set of opportunities going forward. And as Mykola had mentioned earlier, I had made a proposal back in 2016 with Ivan Vinnik and Alexei's support to the Ukrainian parliament to bring transparency to Ukrainian procurement. And I had made a proposal to embrace the offset programs that the US military use, and that over 25 years, the Turkish government built the most impressive military industrial complex in Turkey, leveraging US offset dollars from US defense contractors. So I see it interwoven, but the core innovation and capability sets that already exist in Ukraine, I only see them becoming more valuable, both in terms of the military sector, the intelligence sector, but also the commercial sector.
Thank you. John, just to summarize your comments, smart warfare stands for simplified, managed, agile, responsive technology. And I think Ukraine is showing the world, I didn't make that up, by the way. Ukraine is showing the world that next time you see one of Musk's rockets go up, you should ask yourself, where was the rocket built? Those rockets come from the Union. Richard, you chair a very unique organization called Grand Founders, like the name. You are experts in impact investing, as you said. Where do you see key areas of impact investing in the near and longer term future of tech Ukraine?
Again, like as I said before, there is no unique or universal solution for everyone, because everyone should decide by themselves what is the best for them as an impact investment or as an investment in the end, according to their investment strategy or risk management strategy. But I can explain briefly what we do as a grant founder. So 20% of our funds we invest, we not donate, we donate to humanitarian aid by supporting existing NGOs in Ukraine with water, food, medicine. 30% of our funds goes to support mentorship and grants for emerging entrepreneurs. And with the focus on Ukraine, of course, and once we talk about industries, first and foremost, it's a cybersecurity, fintech, agtech, proptech, quantum computing. Then once we support entrepreneurs from Brazil and Indonesia, Germany, France, or any other country, except the Russia, North Korea, and other OPEC-listed countries, persons, or organizations, we require them to employ Ukrainians or hire service providers from Ukraine. This is another way how we make an impact for Ukraine. And 50% of our funds we accumulate to invest in the future into venture capital and private equity funds that are actively investing in Ukraine or planning to invest in Ukraine in the future through fund of funds vehicle. So this is the way how we are planning to create a market demand and to convince, together with people who already introduced today, we would like to build a big community of venture capital and private equity investors from all around the world, and to provide them the infrastructure, and to invest in Ukraine is by default, it's an impact investments.
Thank you.
Also, I wanted to add that Ukraine, the probability that you're gonna meet the new founder unicorn from Ukraine is a probability is 1.29%. It's a top 5 in the world. Once we talk about Israel, it's a 5%, United States, it's a 2%, United Kingdom and Canada, 1.5%, and Ukraine is top 5 in the world.
Thank you. Let's change gears for a second. Let's talk about concrete ideas that people across the world can do to support Ukraine. I'm going to turn to Bogdan on this if he's still with us.
Gene, I'm going to say that the president's time is limited. I'm going to do 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I'm on time. We're good. Thanks, Walter.
No.
I get 6 minutes.
I realize that.
Yeah. So we're going to go to Bogdan on concrete ideas to support tech Ukraine from across the world. Bogdan, proszę.
We have 7 minutes to martial law, just saying. Not that it makes a difference. We had 2 alarms in the last week or so it's not bad. Anyway, so the issue is the tech sector going to leave? Is the IT people going to leave for greener pastures and so on and so forth? Remember, you know, Russia is sort of off the radar these days, and is Belarus. Remember, Belarus had a huge outsourcing industry. As a matter of fact, I don't know the exact number, but it's many thousand of Belarus IT specialists that have come to Ukraine. And it was mentioned at the very beginning of this panel that the tax situation for IT people is good. They're called a FOP, but it's a contractor that pays 5% tax. Now, if they are interested in working somewhere else, they're going to pay a lot higher taxes and so on. So many of the new apartments in Lviv or in Kyiv, a lot of new construction has been going on the last 5 years. A lot of construction, a lot of apartments. Well, guess who's buying those up? Is IT people. Why? Because they make pretty good money compared to everybody else, and life is pretty good if you're doing well. Of course, if you can help to make the war go away, that's part of the deal.
Thanks, Bogdan. In the interest of time, I'm going to open the floor to 2 or 3 key questions. Any questions to the floor? No questions. Okay, thank you, Yaku. I'm going to wrap it up. We opened with the 3 R's. If you remember, we're going to add a 4th R, which is results. Tech Ukraine is all about delivering results. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that this is not a welfare situation. It's not a quid pro quo. There is significant economic opportunity. One of the companies I represent has 14,000 people in Ukraine, up from 2. All right. Now, we've had to be agile. We've had to be responsive. We've had to move people from Kharkiv. Unfortunately, Kharkiv has been hit pretty hard. One of the best tech hubs in Ukraine was Kharkiv. It will be back. Trust you me. Now, if you had said to me 2 years ago that Ivano-Frankivsk and Ternopil would be the tech hub, it has become that, okay? And I think it's very important to recognize is the agility of the Ukrainian tech sector. It will be a major pillar for the future. And one thing we can be certain of is that in the digital world, Ukraine is highly needed across every industry, whether it's a vineyard tractor, which I saw in France on the vineyard, it's a vineyard robot. All of these applications, which have a military angle, will have a commercial application of sorts. I'm very proud, by the way, as a Canadian, that the sea drones are Bombardier Sea-Doos. Next time you get on a Sea-Doo, I have 2. I'll be thinking about the cleverness that people applied. I'm sure it was duct taped together and glued together. Maybe a little chain flag inside of it, but that's what was used in a very out-of-the-box way. So, дуже дякую. You've got your 4 R's: resilience, responsiveness, right? Resourcefulness, and results. Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraine.
Slava. Nice to meet everybody.
And you were on time because we stole time from another. And I wanted to say, I kind of when we designed it, I think I left it with the digital. And I want Richard, I want you to know that, and the investors that are here, that I left the last one, but it was left for best, because I realized that with all the other stuff, and you could see energy in the different lives, and see agriculture, okay, but with both military technology, especially with the cyber and the cyber technology, Ukraine really is well ahead. Even during the old young days, you guys were way ahead of everybody else. And with that, I think the future is very bright, and that's why I think we ended it on a very high note in terms of the presentations of the 5 sectors. I think high tech or IT really sort of feels like the lead, because you've got a lot of brain power. So thank you again for this panel. It was wonderful.
Roman, hello. Roman.
Yeah, is Roman there? Okay, please help me.
Yes, you.
Yeah, what I'm going to do now is to the final word, and I essentially, considering the roles of the U.S. government and the IFIs, I would thank Van Roman for the and how they can play a role in the takeoff process. I want to thank Van Roman for identifying IFIs, the international monetary or financial institutions, as a key player, because we had an earlier difference on this. So it's the U.S. government and the IFIs, two individuals that are going to be in featured remarks. One, I wanted to simply say, Governor, sir, you ran this state brilliantly 3 times. There was a point at which everybody who knew you would have wanted you to run for president. If you had run for president, we'd had a very different situation than the crazy polarized situation. I want you to know that. And I just wanted to add, because Andrei is about to take over this session. If you have Roman on, then you can take over the session. I just simply want from us the fact that you found your roots in Zakarpattia and are now leading delegations with Andrei to Zakarpattia to help in that area is just for us, man. It's just, it's for me, it's personally heartwarming, because I know that how you worked with Borisha and Zanya and all the Ukrainians when you were governor. So again, with that, Governor Pataki, Andriy, you'll be taking over on the questions and answers, but
I'll bring up yeah.
please.
I don't need to spend any more time, Governor. We've spent enough time on the road. You know, our mutual enjoyment of stuffed cabbage. He will tell you where to get the best one. There's no more to say other than the fact that this gentleman not only was the three-term governor of New York State, but within days of the full-fledged aggression beginning, he was on the border of Ukraine for no reason other than the sense of leadership that a person has inside of him. He has crossed over at great risk to himself, against the wishes of the United States government from time to time. And he has connected on a way with local Ukrainian leaders, from counties to mayors to governors, understanding what it is to lead. And for everything we're talking about today, about planning on infrastructure and rebuilding Ukraine, I can tell you with 100% certainty that over a year ago, when he was in Ukraine and I sat alongside him, he was telling Ukrainian leaders to start planning for rebuilding then. So without any more words, Mr. Governor, it's my pleasure to introduce you here at the Ukrainian Institute.
Andrew, thank you so much for those kind words. And let me just say that the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people are very fortunate to have someone like Andrei Dobryansky carrying the ball for them. And he has been instrumental in the success of the trips that we have made to Ukraine. I was thinking you're probably wondering, what is he doing? You've had great experts in different areas of tank agriculture, all different defense, all different areas. I'm a politician, or at least I was. Governor of New York, what's that got to Ukraine, due to Ukraine? Hungarian, not quite Ukrainian. And in fact, sometimes they don't even get along. With a major law firm, we don't have an office in Ukraine, although I wish we did. And as part of the Reconstruction, I'm going to argue that we should have. So what is he doing here? Well, I'll tell you, when I saw the images of the Russian invasion, I knew right away that this wasn't Ukraine's fight. This wasn't just the people of Ukraine. This is all of our fight. Anybody who believes in the rule of law, democracy, and the right of a nation and a people to live in peace, it is our fight. So in those first days after the war, we said, what can we do to help? You know, we can't just sit back here. There are all sorts of organizations that were created to help the people of Ukraine. And we were thinking, we don't want to do that. We don't want to raise money and give a check to someone where we don't know what it's going to do. We're going to go to Ukraine. We're going to go to Ukraine, see what the needs are, talk to the people. We're going to raise some funds. We're going to bring in some things. And we're going to keep going back until this war is over. The people of Ukraine can live in peace and with confidence in their future. So Andrei's been an enormous help. I believe you heard earlier from Josh Eisen with the Pataki Center, who has been, I think now 9 or 10 times to Ukraine and has been our point person over there. I made a trip literally within the first week with Andrei and others, and we crossed the border and we brought in food and clothing and supplies and other things. But most importantly, we met with the government officials and we asked them what they need. And at that point, we were told, well, we need housing. In Zakarpattia alone, there are over 200,000 internally displaced refugees. And we're putting them up in people's homes and people are being gracious, but we need housing. So the next trip back, we were able to bring in houses that you could move that had heating and lighting and you could pop up anywhere. And the Ukrainian government just said, wow, this is tremendous. Keep coming. And then last fall, President Zelensky's wife was here and did a tremendous job making the case for American help for Ukraine. And I had a chance to talk to her. And I said, what do you need? And she said, we need heat and we need power. The Russians are doing everything they can to destroy our infrastructure, to have us starve and freeze in the dark and the cold. we need heaters and we need generators. And we were able, through our little center, to put together, I think, almost 1,000 different heaters and generators that we were able to take into Ukraine. And we were told that we provided heat this past winter for over 350,000 people in Ukraine. People say, isn't it great what the Pataki Foundation is doing? We don't have a foundation. We have a center. Foundations have endowments and money. What we have is spirit. And what we have are people who understand the importance of Ukraine's fight and understand that it is our fight. And, you know, I look at the program for today. Let the rebuilding begin. And I'm sure there are those of you who are saying, well, it's premature. There's still a war going on. We're not quite sure when or how that war is going to end. But let me tell you, it's not too soon. The time to begin rebuilding in Ukraine is right now. It was probably last month or 6 months ago, but it certainly is today. Because I have no doubt that this war is going to end, hopefully sooner rather than later, that Ukraine is going to win this war, that it's going to continue to be a strong, vibrant bastion of freedom, and that its economy is going to grow in ways that we can only think about. When I was there, I cannot tell you how impressed I was with the people. I was listening a little bit about the IT sector and the entrepreneurship and the creativity, and you look at what Ukraine's military has done, taking ordinary items and turning them into advanced weapons that they can use to defend their country. And the spirit I see among the people of Ukraine, bright, educated, motivated, leaves me with no doubt that Ukraine is going to come back stronger than ever. And it's in all of our interest to begin that rebuilding process today. I'll just tell you one story on one of the trips where we went into Zakarpattia, and there was a school that had been closed down, and it was used to house refugees who had been displaced from the east. And they're almost all women and children. There were virtually no males there. And we talked to them. And I would ask a young woman, what do you need? Your family, your children are here. They're sleeping in cots or on the floor of this school. The answer would be, we don't need anything. What we need is your government to provide the weapons so that we can win this. Get my husband fighting back east the weapons he needs. Get my husband, who's a doctor, back in Mariupol, the medicine and the equipment he needs to help save lives and help our people. You contrast it to so many in this country today, where you don't have to ask them what they need. They will tell you that they're entitled to this and they're entitled to that. You don't see that in Ukraine. You see patriotism, commitment, and an understanding that they have to stand together and pull together to bring that great country to a much better future. You combine that spirit, you combine that attitude that it's not what's in it for me, it's what we can do to rebuild our country. You combine it with the highly educated workforce and motivated workforce, with the infrastructure that has been significantly destroyed but will be rebuilt and make that a very strong part and asset of Ukraine's future. So I look at this and the question is, let the rebuilding begin. And the answer is yes, not tomorrow, not when the war is over. Let the rebuilding begin today. To all of you who are Ukrainian or Ukrainian American, you should all be enormously proud, because your people, your country has inspired the rest of the world. And I can tell you that our little group isn't going to stop. So long as there is a need, we're going to continue to help. Andre, you know, we have another trip we're scheduling where we will again take over things, humanitarian relief to help the people of Ukraine. That's the little that we can do to try to make a difference. But those of you who have venture capital, those of you who have tech companies, those of you who have the ability to build apartments or recreate infrastructure or rebuild the energy system Ukraine desperately needs, you can do so much. You can do so much more in the process. Make money for your investors. and for your workers. So Andre, again, let me just thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight. You know, I know I'm the last thing before you can have a drink and maybe even a piece of stuffed cabbage. So I've learned early on that when you're in that role, you're best to get off the stage as quickly as possible. So let me just thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your commitment to Ukraine. Thank you for being a part of this rebuilding process that will start and will succeed. And thank you for having me here this afternoon. Slava Ukraine.
What do you want to introduce Roman or yeah, I'll introduce Roman, but you can. Yeah, we'll have the press. He's got to go.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Roman's on.
Yes. On your head.
I also have the next speaker is the final speaker is someone who's actually a friend and is the son of a very good friend who actually came here to this institute many years ago as Minister of Energy to speak to all of us. Pavel Kachin, and I had the pleasure of meeting him again this December when he got across into Ukraine. Roman is of a wonderful Ukrainian family, so that the personal part I wanted to add. His sister is a big community leader down in South Africa. He himself came to the United States to work at the World Bank, and now it's not just Ukraine that's in his portfolio. He has a very large portfolio, and if I had to read all the names, we wouldn't get to the reception. So with that, he's the section leader of a large section of folks and that depend on the World Bank or work with the World Bank. And so with that, Roman, I think then if you could tell us what you think the IFIs can do for Ukraine in this reconstruction, when do you think this will should start happening? I'd be really appreciative of it. Okay, Roman, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for putting together this event. Thanks for such personal introduction. I'm speaking to you from Washington, D.C., here from the World Bank headquarters. I represent here Ukraine at the World Bank board since 2016. So World Bank has been pretty important to help Ukraine to come over this unprecedented crisis. And first of all, just to give the starting point, we just completed the second edition of Rapid Damage Needs Assessment Report. Many of you may have seen this report, which identifies the total needs to rebuild Ukraine after the Russian aggression will come up to $411 billion US. And the number obviously will be higher as the war continues. The human capital loss is massive. The poverty rate in Ukraine went up from 5% till 25% by end of 2022, and may rise as high as to 50%. So 50% of Ukrainians may be below the poverty line before the end of 2023. The economy contracted almost 1/3, 30% last year, and our energy infrastructure is estimated to be damaged almost by 50%. So with the spillovers of the war, as we all know, goes well beyond the Ukraine to food security, energy crisis, and many others. Despite this aggression, Ukraine showed incredible resilience, both on the military front, but I would like to give you a bit perspective on the financial sector. So despite this aggression and war, the public finance system remains fully functional, as well as the banking sector and financial system overall. Only 2 banks collapsed since the beginning of the war, It seems at par with the US, where there is no war. And the system again delivers on all commitments, able to serve the population. Ukraine is a pretty much unique economy at the moment. All resources mobilized domestically, which include 100% of taxes, custom duties, any local borrowing goes to armed forces of Ukraine. There is no such country in the world at the moment which has such economy model. So we spend for our military needs almost 40% of our GDP. And everything else is financed by the international community. So the teachers' salary, doctors, civil servants, pensions, social benefits, all kind of public sector obligation is covered by the donors. So last year it came up to 31 billion, unprecedented amount for Ukraine. I'm proud that half of this amount was channeled through the World Bank. It's both World Bank own resources, but also resources which World Bank mobilized from donors across the world. Largest one last year was the United States, which provided almost 15 billion out of this total amount. So this project was incredible challenge for the World Bank. The project to support Ukraine has an acronym PEACE, quite relevant for the current circumstances. It became the largest project the World Bank ever did since its inception in 1944. Now, when we look forward to the 2023 and the war continues, we need to continue this support. So to support the economy and basically just to keep the state running, we will need a $40 billion US. That's what was identified by International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And 2 weeks ago, the IMF approved the program to support Ukraine, which has IMF own commitments as well as commitments from other donors. So, which means the deficit of 40 billion is fully financed for 2023. So despite the war, Ukraine has secured financing to run the country by end of 2023 in the amount of $40 billion US, and these are all either already disbursed fund or hard commitments from a large partners of Ukraine. As Governor Pataki just mentioned about the immediate recovery, which we have to start now, and I have some good news for the audience. Basically, we are starting the recovery now, and as part of the report prepared by the World Bank, Government of Ukraine, European Commission, and the United Nations, we identified priorities that are to be financed for the immediate recovery in 2023. And there are 5 priorities. The first one is demining, second is energy sector, housing, social infrastructure, and transport. This all come up to 14 billion, which are to be financed in 2023. We already secured half of this amount. So about 7 billion is already available for immediate reconstruction, and which will go to the areas I just mentioned. And this also includes support for the private sector. The private sector, especially agribusinesses, small and medium enterprises, they need support. So there will be concessional financing available through the international financial institutions, support to the local bank to extend financing to these sectors. We are also working to put together the war risk insurance. We have an entity within the World Bank Group called MIGA, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, which is able to provide insurance, war insurance for both international investors, and just recently we are working to extend it also to local investors. So this hopefully will allow the businesses will allow us to support businesses and to preserve the businesses in such challenging time. So looking forward, basically, this is just to give you a sense and comparison. Before the war, Ukraine used to mobilize about 5 billion of external financing a year. This year, we are targeting almost 11 times more of this amount. It's incredible amounts both to raise and to mobilize and to manage. So how basically this can be done? And it really comes to the effort of the whole world to manage it. We have launched jointly as a government of Ukraine and the G7 countries a multi-donor coordination platform. Many like to call it a financial Rammstein, to put analogy to the military Rammstein, which meets about every month to coordinate the efforts of main donors for Ukraine. We are proud that Ukraine, together with US and EU, are co-chairs of this platform. So the Ukrainian voice is loud, and basically the whole design of this platform is to make it demand-driven. So we are mobilizing funds to secure the needs which Ukraine has at the moment. We have quite high-level support on the US side. Deputy National Security Advisor is co-chairing this platform as well, high-level political representation from the European Commission. Also, we are working to pilot a new instruments to mobilize additional financing, kind of leveraging. So before last year, we used to receive a donor financing, which basically was dollar to dollar for Ukraine. If any donor contributed $1 of grant financing, that was $1 for Ukraine. So this year here at the World Bank, we are basically on the way to create a mechanism which will allow to leverage and with the ratio up to 3. So for each dollar the donors can provide to this financial facility, we can mobilize up to $3 of concessional lending for Ukraine. So this will be another substantial support that donors and international financial institutions can provide for Ukraine. So there is a lot of challenges and to mobilize these funds and to put them into work and to deliver them into areas where we need them. As I mentioned, it takes the effort of the whole world to do this, but we are united. We are ready to do this. We see the strong support from our partners. Capacity of government remains strong despite all the challenges. And basically, we will need 3 things for this year to make it safe. We need financing, we need weapons, and we need sanctions to continue to weaken our energy. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
I'm actually very grateful that you actually went through all the information that you did, because you actually gave us a very, very good idea of the kind of aid that we've had and where to possibly go if we need the aid again. I also would want to finish with that, something that I talked to Deputy Bendenich about just now, and that is that we as a Ukrainian, those that are Ukrainian American in the audience, have to remember that we also are voters in American society, and we might want to convince our congressmen and senators that this year the World Bank and the United States government has guaranteed that we'll be okay, but 24 could be a different situation. So for us, we have to get on our old boots and stuff and start making sure that 24 is as secure in terms of the finances that you just talked about as 23 is. And that's a real lesson that we have to learn. With that, I would actually, I don't know, are we going to ask for questions?
Roman, do you have?
Are there questions? That's what I'm going to ask. If there are not, then I think basically that's what Governor Pataki has said, that you don't want to be between the audience and the cocktail. But Vanu Roman, I just wanted, I know that your time is extremely precious. I thank you the same way as I thank the governor for your time. It was well spent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Walter. Bye.
And with that, I will invite everybody to our cocktail reception. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's upstairs on the 3rd floor. This is the part of the conference that everybody enjoys, because that's where you really, especially business conferences, because that's where you really get to talk to the folks you want to do deals with. So I'm just kidding, but thank you. And again, folks, to our next business conference, I think it'll probably be again in Val. This place is wonderful. Or if Chicago decides to spring for it, we'll do something in Chicago and let's say the Global Affairs Council and so on. Okay, thank you again.